Hey guys, welcome to EDA Talk Sports here, and we're going to be going through our preview show for the upcoming round of Premier League games. I'm happy to have you all here with me as we go through each and every game, give an overview of what we've been seeing with each team, and then a quick prediction of each game. So we're going to kick off with Brentford versus Chelsea, and this is a very interesting game for a number of reasons. If you remember the reverse fixture, Brentford beat Chelsea 2-0, and I'm sure Chelsea will be looking for revenge in some way or form. If we kick off with Brentford, first and foremost, their most recent game, they lost to West Ham 4-2, a Bowen hat-trick. And Brentford have been conceding goals at an alarming rate in the last couple of games. 4 goals conceded against West Ham, 4 goals against Liverpool, 3 goals against Man City. Of course, there's some tough teams in those runs, but Brentford have always been known for being defensively solid, and they're not showing it at the moment. And so, with Tony and Mopé, finding their feet, working on their partnership, getting better and producing goals, we need the defence to kind of hold and do what they need to do. Otherwise, Brentford will be in the position that they currently see themselves in, and that's 16th, and that's not where they want to be. Going into this game for Chelsea, who sit 11th in the table, they will potentially be reeling off the Carabao Cup loss to Liverpool, a very, very brutal loss for a number of reasons. One, because they probably should have won the game. They weren't outplayed by Liverpool. It was a close game, 50-50 game. They probably had some of the better chances in the game as well. If they were ruthless, which they haven't been all season, they would have won that game. This would have put Poch in a much better light with the Chelsea fans. The project would have looked better. And so it was a game that they couldn't really afford to lose, but they did. But it was good to see their character come back against Leeds, tough team in the Championship, and a team who should hopefully be coming back up to the Premier League. Tested Chelsea, but that last-minute winner by Gallagher proved to be all important. Going up into the predicted lineups, no real major surprises or shocks from my side. Key players from a Brentford perspective, Mopé, Tony, I think it's obvious and key. They've got some big misses in the back line with me and Pinnock being out as well. So I expect Chelsea to, as ruthless as they haven't been, I expect them to take advantage. From a Chelsea perspective, I'm really locked in and keyed in on this midfield. I think Casado, Gallagher, Enzo is a top quality midfield in terms of profile. They are players who can do a wide array of things very, very well. So the dynamics of the midfield can change at any point of the game. The one thing I think they lack as a core group is creativity. Very hard-working players, good passers, will give you good defensive effort and good work rate. But creativity is where they probably lack, and that's where Cole Palmer probably comes in. So how do they get him into those key areas in between the lines, in those half spaces to create for Jackson or Sterling? And so I'll probably have a separate video to that. But for this game, I'm going to be going with a 2-2 draw. I think Brentford's defence has been leaky, has been weak. Chelsea, to the same degree, haven't been much better. I think Tony and Mopé will cause trouble for that back line, but I also think the intricacies of the Chelsea attack will cause issues for a depleted Brentford team. So I'm going 2-2 draw for Brentford versus Chelsea. Next game we're going to be looking at is Everton versus West Ham, and Everton are coming into this round of fixtures with probably a pep in their step a little bit. The 10-point deduction has been reduced to 6. They are now 15th in the table. Given that deduction as well, they could have been sitting higher, as we all know. Dyche has done an amazing job this season. It's a testament to the kind of manager he is. And they're going up against a West Ham team who just got their first win of 2024. So it's going to be a really, really interesting game. One thing we know about Everton versus West Ham, the games are normally quite tight. They're normally quite well contested. Two passionate fan bases, two teams who normally always come to play and put in a good effort and know how to fight. Going into this game from an Everton perspective, it's really, really interesting, to be honest with you, because if Everton don't win, they tend or try not to lose. And so they have quite a lot of draws in their last couple of games. I think the last game they had against Brighton, they were winning. A last-minute draw with Brighton, who had 10 men, will be a bit of annoyance to Dyche. You would be thinking these are the games that we've got to capitalise on, and I completely agree. But again, they tend not to lose. No win in their last six, but only one loss. And I think the major thing for them is where the goals coming from. From a West Ham perspective, again, as mentioned, the 4-2 victory against Brentford was really, really good to see. Bowen hat-trick and the return of Lucas Paqueta were key elements for West Ham as they look to press on in 2024 and climb up the table. If you look at the table, you'd be surprised. I mean, they sit 8th and they've been doing really well. So I know the West Ham fans have had a lot of pressure for David Moyes, but you look at where they are in the table, you look at how they can continue to improve as a team. I think there's gaps and areas for them to improve next season, and they have got a couple of injuries, but with the likes of Bowen, Kudus, Ward-Prowse, and Paqueta, especially if they're all fit and they're back now. There was periods where they didn't have Kudus, African Cup of Nations, a large period where they didn't have Paqueta, injury, times where Bowen, who has really struggled as a striker, to be honest with you, especially in the Arsenal game, I saw him really get bullied. But we're gonna hope and see that this is gonna be a really, really well contested game. Again, I think maybe sitting on the fence here, I think a draw is the most likely outcome. If not, I would probably go for a West Ham win. The reason I say that is you look at the Everton defence, really strong, really steady. I think with the West Ham attack, it's in this makeup and with this personnel, it's really, really dangerous. But the Everton attack isn't giving me much hope. So I'm going to go with a 1-1 draw, and kind of follows the trend for Everton West Ham. Next game, Fulham versus Brighton. We're going to be looking into. This is a game which is really interesting coming off last week. Fulham coming off the highs of beating Man United in a last-minute game. Iwobi with the winner. And Fulham, again, are a very interesting team. I thought since the loss of Mitrovic, how would they perform? And they really haven't had any kind of standout players. They've had a contribution from each attacking player to kind of make up for the loss of Mitrovic, and I think they're still not there. Sometimes they need a goal out of nowhere, and they don't have that talisman to do it, unfortunately. Looking at Brighton, they currently sit 7th in the table, which is really, really impressive, and they're a really high-scoring team. However, their defence is leaky at times, and that doesn't only go for them, that goes for Fulham as well. So I'm expecting some goals in this game. Key people I want to call out from a Brighton side is Pascal Gross. Been doing really well. He's hit, I believe, 10 Premier League assists now. A real creative force for Brighton. And Simon Adingra, who is, again, since coming back from AFCON, has continued to show his quality even before he left. Really, really impressive. From a Fulham side, again, I think for them it's going to be really, really interesting. I think the person I always look to, because I think he has the potential to be a decent Premier League striker, is Munez. Is he going to be able to lead the line? Is he going to be able to put enough pressure on that Brighton defence, who have been a bit tricky away from home, haven't really been as effective as they probably would have wanted to be away from home? It's going to be really interesting. For this game, I'm going to push for potentially a Brighton win. I'm going to go for a 2-1 Brighton win. Moving on to, I think, one of my sleeper games of the weekend, it's going to be Newcastle versus Wolves. Newcastle, who are in not great form. I didn't think coming into the season that their fans or Eddie Howe, to be honest, would see themselves sitting in 10th at the start of the season, but a combination of injuries, a combination of poor form, a combination of large, I guess, and extended schedules with Champions League games have pushed a team that probably weren't 100% ready for Champions League football into a spot like that. They weren't ready for, so they're ahead of their project by a couple of years, and this is probably a season which is kind of a corrector, essentially. So looking at Newcastle again, they had a kind of a thriller with Blackburn Rovers, eventually winning and progressing into the next stage of the FA Cup. But the key thing for them in the Premier League was a 4-1 loss to Arsenal, and it could have been many more, to be honest with you. key thing for Newcastle, even with the return of Botman, defence have been really, really struggling. No clean sheet in the last 6 games isn't ideal, isn't what you would say is a top 4, top 5, top 6, top 8 team form. And that's something that Newcastle are really going to have to improve on. On the other hand, Wolves looking really, really strong. 3-game winning streak, including the win in the FA Cup against Brighton. Really, really being impressed by Gary O'Neill. Great work that he's doing across the board. And they've been really strong away from home, unbeaten in their last 6. Key thing to look out for in this game, and you may be looking at the Wolves team saying, there's no recognised striker. And that's because they've lost Hwang and Cunha potentially for this game. Hwang coming off injured in the last game, Cunha who's been out for a while. And that's a big, big miss, guys. That's 19 goals and 9 assists out of a team that really need those goals and really need that creative output. So it's going to be really interesting to see how Wolves manage to unlock this leaky Newcastle defence, given that they have no kind of key focal point in their attack. Looking at the predicted lineup, we'll see what Gary O'Neill goes with. But this is a formation he's stuck with for the majority of the season. So seeing who will fit into those roles will be quite interesting. I'm going to go with, and it's really hard for me to say because I think Wolves are in really good form and I think Newcastle aren't in, but the quality of Newcastle and the home crowd may make the difference. And given the last game that they had was really, really controversial, I'm going to go with a draw again, guys. I'm going to go with a 2-2 draw, Newcastle Wolves. I think it's going to be a fiery game. But if I was going to go with anybody, I'd probably go with Pickwick with a Wolves win. Even with those injuries, I think they're doing really well. Next game, Nottingham Forest versus Liverpool. Again, a really, really interesting game and a key game for the title race. Starting off with Nottingham Forest, the faith right now isn't really there. I think the one thing that they can hold their hat onto is they're going to be playing at the City Ground. The Nottingham Forest fans normally turn up, normally create a great atmosphere, and the team need to kind of reward that with a performance, I think. Coming off a 1-0 loss to Man United, a last-minute goal from Casemiro in the FA Cup, and a loss to Aston Villa as well. They'll be hoping to bounce back with a victory. It's key to remember that last season at the City Ground, Nottingham Forest actually did beat Liverpool. Awoni with the goal as well, so it was really, really key to see. And I think going in for Forest, they need to rely on, obviously, solid defence, but the combination of Callum Hudson-Odoi, Alanga and Awoni needs to be a real focal point for them and start to spark some success. Moving on to Liverpool, our Carabao Cup winners. What can you say about Liverpool at the moment? Not only are they winning, they're winning with an injury-affected team. They're winning with a lot of their younger players. And I'll probably go into this in depth in another video, but what Klopp is doing reminds me of a reverse of what Sir Alex was doing when he left Man United. And I'll leave it at that, but he's setting Liverpool up really, really well for when he leaves. My expectation of Liverpool is that they're going to win this game and they should win it convincingly. But no game in the Premier League is ever easy. I think one thing that I'm hoping will come to light is how they're going to prepare and how they're going to perform with the level of injuries that they've had. You can see the predicted lineup is not what you'd expect from a Liverpool team at this moment in time, or at this moment in time you probably would, but wouldn't expect it if they were full strength. And so that's going to be a question mark for them going into this game. From a Nottingham Forest team, I think, again, they have to be solid at the back. But that attack of Alanga, Gibbs White, Hudson-Odoi, Awoni, that has to start producing goals, that has to start producing assists, that has to start having an impact on games sooner rather than later, given where they are in the table. It's only going to take a couple of good performances from Luton before Nottingham Forest realise that they're in trouble. So I'm going for a Liverpool win, and I'm going for a 4-1 Liverpool win. I think they're going to be firing, and once they find the back of the net a couple of times, they're going to continue to. Next game will be Tottenham versus Crystal Palace, and Crystal Palace will come into this game with some confidence with their new manager, uh, Oliver Glasner, and the hope will be that they can pull up some trees. In recent games, they haven't been able to find what they need and what they require against the Tottenham team, who have always been in and around the European positions and challenging really, really well. Um, from a Crystal Palace side, Gay's out, so again they're going to be weakened defensively. Palace again, normally in looking at the Premier League season, don't tend to score enough. In recent weeks, that has kind of changed. So 3-0 against Burnley and 3-0 against Sheffield United, but those are two teams in the relegation places. Can they perform like that, and can they do really well against a top team? That's to be seen. Don't score enough, concede too much, and they have no away wins in their last 8 games, so that's a concern. Moving on to Tottenham, first, congrats to, I guess, the London Manager of the Year, Ainge. I'm not sure how they came to that decision, the football writers, but nonetheless, Spurs come into this game off the back of a 2-1 loss against Wolves, and Spurs have been again struggling for that form that had them really, really high up in the table at the beginning of the season. I think for them, it's going to be really, really interesting to see how they perform going forward towards the end of the season. Their key aim, looking at the table, will be to solidify a top 5 position, and it's between them, Man United, Aston Villa, on who's gonna, drop down into the Brighton, West Ham's, Wolves of the world. And so that's going to be really interesting. Looking at the lineups, I'm going to go and just call out within the Crystal Palace lineup. I'm not seeing Eze, I'm not seeing Elise, and so those are 2 key critical players for a Crystal Palace team that are normally devoid of creativity. Tottenham, on the other hand, look full of creativity in their attacking lineup, and so for me, I'm going with a 3-1 Tottenham win. Now progressing to the last game for Saturday, Luton versus Aston Villa. Luton, who are not in the great form, so they've got 4 losses on the bounce, including an FA Cup murder by by Man City. It was ugly. They've conceded 19 goals in their last 5 games, and they were looking good. Like, for a team that were battling and tough to play against, I still think they've got that element to them to a degree. They've played some really, really tough teams, but they've got to pick it up. They've really, really got to pick it up again, as they could easily be going down with the other promoted teams, Sheffield United and Burnley. Looking at Aston Villa, what can you say? You've got to be really, really impressed. A team that not only looks really well on paper, but perform really well. High scoring team. We've been seeing what Watkins has been doing. I'm a big fan of the squad as a whole, if that makes sense. I'm a big fan of the team. I'm a fan of the backups they've got. I'm a fan of the players they've got on the bench. Really, really good built team. Not only starting 11, but team. So you saw it when Mings got injured. They didn't miss a step, because they have 3 or 4 top quality centre backs who can step in and play a role. For this game, I'm going with an Aston Villa win. I'm going to go with a 3-1 win to Aston Villa. Moving on to Sunday, so we got Burnley versus Bournemouth. Burnley, it's not looking good. Again, with the Burnley team, latest game lost 3-0 to Crystal Palace, 5-0 loss to Arsenal as well, and yeah, again, big fan of Vincent Kompany and what he did in the Championship, but it's not looking good, and I personally think that they should stick with Vincent Kompany, even if they do get relegated. It's going to be experience for a manager like him, and I don't see kind of any improvement or anything that's going to benefit from sacking him now or at the end of the season. The players seem to buy into the way he wants to play. It's just they're not getting the results, and they probably just don't have enough quality, to be honest with you. Bournemouth, again, really big fan of the manager Iriola. I think one of the aspects that has kind of come into their game, unfortunately, they've played a number of top quality teams. So Leicester, who sit at the top of the Championship, Man City, who are second in the Premier League. Newcastle, again, a top team. The loss to Fulham would have hurt them as well. No wins in their last five, three losses, two draws. But I have a belief in their system. I have a belief in their manager. And especially in a game like this, I think if they are able to use Solanke, Semenya, Clivert, Tavernier in the way that they've been using them against teams like Man United away, there's a real opportunity here for them to get some goals. And so I'm going with a Bournemouth win. I'm going with a 2-0 Bournemouth win. And then to, I guess, the biggest game of the weekend, the Manchester derby, Man City versus Man United. What can you say? It looks like KDB and Haaland are back on top form. This Man City team know how to dominate. They know how to win. And if they know how to dominate anybody, it's a Man United team. Yeah, what can you say? I mean, they've beaten, in the last 5 games that they've played each other, they've beaten them 4 times. Man United have the one sole win on their side, which I believe was last season, a 2-1 win. They've been pulling out results, so not every win has been the Luton 6-2. A lot of the last couple of games have been really tight and really close, and they could have easily lost against Chelsea. And they've pulled out victories against Brentford and Bournemouth 1-0. But that's Championship mentality, having to pull it out. But this game will be big pressure. It's a derby. They're in a title race. They'll need to perform. I don't really doubt that they're going to perform, to be honest with you. They haven't shown that they won't previously. Looking at Man United coming off the win that they had in the FA Cup against Nottingham Forest, but also the 2-1 loss against Fulham. Yeah, that loss would have hurt them, and I think there's a lot of doubt around Erik ten Hag, around the Man United fans. They've had patience, I think, to a certain degree, but again, when you have losses at home to Fulham, there are going to be questions. And so, I think from my perspective, will Man United show up, or will they lay down and get dominated by Man City like they normally do? It was quite funny because they've been, over the last couple of years, they've been acting like little brothers of Man City. Even last season, some of their fans were like, I want Man City to win the Premier League over Arsenal, and mind blowing. And I'd love to get the reaction of Man United fans now with the title race, given that Liverpool's a major rival, Man City's a major rival, Arsenal's a major rival. Who do you want to see win the Premier League now? It's quite interesting. But yeah, I mean, I think Man City are starting to put their foot in the ground, and I know with the change in structure within Manchester City, the Jim Radcliffe has called it out already. Man City are the boys in Manchester, and it's on Manchester United and the ownership and the players to kind of bring some respect and bring some glory back to Man United, which hasn't been the case over the last couple of years. And I think they have a future there, if I'm being honest, but they just need to be able to rebuild. And then going into the last game of the weekend, Sheffield United versus Arsenal. Again, it's going to be really, really interesting. Sheffield United are the worst team in the league. And there's a question I really have for Sheffield United fans. Has Chris Wilder improved your team? I'm seeing 5-0 losses to Aston Villa and to Brighton. Obviously, the sole win against Luton was a key one to make sure that you're, not adrift of Burnley, to say the least, but to get out of the relegation zone, you're 11 points adrift, and I think that's insurmountable for a team like Sheffield United. What you're now playing for is pride and respect and building into next season, in my honest opinion. And even having arguments on the pitch against Brighton, it wasn't a good look. So yeah, moving on to Arsenal and kind of where my interest lies as an Arsenal fan. They're on fire. They're on fire now. The sole loss against Porto, which we'll see if it's an aberration, or we'll see if, Porto might have Arsenal's number. In the Premier League, they've been on absolute fire. The amount of goals they've been scoring, the way they've been playing. The Newcastle win was a statement as well. They'll be looking to keep up winning ways. And there's an opportunity to make another statement if Man City or Liverpool slip up in the days prior. All 3 teams are firing. All 3 teams are doing well. And what can you say? So thank you guys for sticking with me as we go through this game. Last game, I think Arsenal are going to beat Sheffield United. I'm going to put 4-0 just to be nice. Um, so going into this week's fixtures, we can see the Premier League table. You can kind of break it down into groups now with that far advanced. Liverpool, Man City, Arsenal in the title race. Aston Villa, Tottenham, Man United competing for that last couple of Champions League places. You then have a group of Brighton, West Ham, Wolves, Newcastle, and Chelsea, who are looking at those Europa League and Conference League places at the moment. And then you have the mid-table teams who, like Fulham, Crystal Palace, Bournemouth, who are probably looking to get as far away from the relegation zone as they can. And then you have Bournemouth, Everton, Brentford, Nottingham Forest, who again will try and get away from Luton, Burnley, and Sheffield United. Looking at it, I think the Burnley, Sheffield United are definitely down. It's going to be up to Luton on who they can drag back into this race and how quickly they can do it. But if they don't start firing soon, they're in danger because Nottingham Forest won't lie down in games. Brentford definitely won't lie down. And I think Everton will surely enough pull themselves away with their defence. So guys, this has been the Premier League preview show. We'll be checking back in during the weekend to see if there's any shock results. And then we'll be coming back here on Tuesday after the Arsenal game to have a recap of the weekend and see how we performed on our predictions. Thank you for joining and talk soon.